In this video, I'm going to be discussing how to find the intercepts of a linear equation. So linear equations are going to have two intercepts, an x-intercept, which is going to be the point where the line crosses the x-axis, and a y-intercept, the point where your line crosses the y-axis. The only exception to this is a horizontal line will have only a y-intercept, or a vertical line will have only an x-intercept. But as long as you're dealing with a linear equation that has both an x and a y, then it's going to be a line that's going to cross both the y-axis and the x-axis. And it will do so at these points, the x-intercept and the y-intercept. So let's talk for a moment about the ordered pairs of these intercepts. So the x-intercept is going to be, well, we don't know how far right or left it's going to be, so we'll call that A. And then how far up and down? Well, if it's an x-intercept, it means it's on the x-axis, so it won't go up or down any. So this point will be A, 0, where A is some real number along this axis. And so what will be the ordered pair of this point? Well, we're not going right or left because the point is on the y-axis here. So I'm going to say 0, and then we're not really sure how far up or down we're going, so we're going to call that B. So our intercepts will look like this, A0 and 0B, which means that if you notice, the y value of all of our x-intercepts is 0. Similarly, the x value of all of our y-intercepts is going to be 0. So this is important information, and in fact it's good for more than just linear equations. As you continue your math study, you'll end up using this in Algebra 2, perhaps for parabolas, or in pre-calc or calculus. But this will keep coming back over and over, this notion of intercepts. So we're going to look at some linear equations here, and we're going to find their intercepts. In this first example, we see that 5x minus 3y equals negative 15. So this is going to be a line, and it has both x and y variables, so we know it's not going to be a horizontal or a vertical line. What this means, we can use this knowledge over here, this a comma 0 to be my x-intercept and my 0 comma b, which is my y-intercept, and we can go ahead and apply this knowledge to this equation to find its intercepts. So let's start by finding the x-intercept first, which I'm going to abbreviate x-int for intercept. And you'll notice the x-intercept is going to be located where your y value is 0. Which means I'm going to take this equation, I'm going to rewrite it, except I'm going to plug a 0 in for y. When I do that, this essentially cancels out that term, and I'm left with only 5x equals negative 15. Well, I can divide both sides by 5, and I see that x equals negative 3. The x-intercept is an ordered pair, so I'm going to write it as such, where my x value was negative 3 and my y value was 0. So the first of these intercepts is going to be negative 3, 0. Similarly, I can find the y-intercept, and the y-intercept is going to be right here where my x value is 0, so I can use that knowledge where x is 0, and I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this equation, substituting in the 0 for x, which means that term cancels out, and I'm left with just negative 3y equals negative 15. So I can divide both sides by negative 3, and y equals 5. But again, this is an ordered pair, our intercept, so I'm going to write it as such, where my x value was 0, and my y value was 5. So I have two intercepts, my x-intercept and my y-intercept, from this linear equation. Well, this is good for a couple of things. One, if you just needed to know what the intercepts were, we're kind of done. But two, if we wanted to graph this line, it would be very easy to do so without having to do any manipulations to this equation. All I have to do is plot my two intercepts and then draw a line between them. So let's go ahead and graph this line 5x minus 3y equals negative 15. And I've already found the two intercepts, negative 3, 0 and 0, 5. So let's go ahead and plot those points on my coordinate system. Negative 3, 0 will be over here at negative 3 and 0. And 0, 5 is going to be up here at 5. So here I have plotted my intercepts. So I'm going to grab a straight edge now, and I'm going to go ahead and draw a line right there. So 3 things about drawing lines, remember. I'm going to use a straight edge when I draw this line to make sure it's nice and straight. I'm going to extend my line beyond the borders of the graph just a little bit, and I'm going to put arrows on the end which indicate that this line continues forever. So the graph of the line 5x minus 3y equals negative 15 is right here, and we found it and graphed it easily by using its intercepts. In this next example, I have the linear equation negative 3/4 x plus 1/2 y equals negative 3. I would like to graph this line, but I would like to do so by first finding its intercepts. So recall that in order to find the x-intercept, I'm going to substitute y equals 0, and in order to find the y-intercept, I'm going to substitute x equals 0. So let's go ahead and do that. So I have negative 3/4 x plus 1/2 y, but y is 0. So that cancels this out. So what I'm left with is negative 3/4 x equals negative 3. So I can isolate my x here by multiplying both sides by the reciprocal, negative 4/3, and I'll do so. So over here on the left side, the negatives cancel, the 4's cancel, the 3's cancel, right? That was the point of doing all that business, and x is by itself. On the right side, my negatives will cancel, and my 3's will cancel, but I do still have this 4, so x will equal 4. So I can write this as an ordered pair, 4, 0, because those were my x and y values respectively. So my x-intercept looks like it's going to be 4, 0. My y-intercept is going to be located when I substitute x for 0. So when I do that, that term cancels out, and I'm left with 1/2 y equals negative 3. In order to isolate my y, I can multiply both sides by 2, which there's the y by itself, and negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. So since I have my y value of negative 6, my x value of 0, I can write this as an ordered pair, 0, negative 6. So here are my two intercepts that I found from this linear equation. Now I'm ready to graph my equation, negative 3/4 x plus 1/2 y equals negative 3, because I found my intercepts first. So 4, 0, I'm going to plot right here at 4, 0, and then 0, negative 6, I'm going to plot right down here. So I have my 2 points, which is sufficient for drawing a line. So I'm going to grab a little straight edge here, and I'm going to go ahead and line up these points. And I'm going to go ahead and draw my line. So I used a straight edge. I extended my line just past the borders of the graph, and I put arrows on the end of my line. So this line is going to represent the equation negative 3/4 x plus 1/2 y equals negative 3.